Trouble number 12, The Raven, Revenge, and the Reckoning. Daylight found me rocking in the saddle, riding east. I figured I'd already covered 20 miles since leaving Mara's ranch. The Grulla gelding was settling into a ground-eating trot, young, rangy, nearly 16 hands, lean-legged, and fired with youth. This horse could move. My thoughts drifted as the miles passed. It was the first time since Yuli died that I'd felt anything close to normal. Felt like I'd lived with people. I wondered if Mara had found the note I left. I didn't know what lay ahead, and I sure as hell couldn't go back. The gelding trotted steady as a drumbeat, eating up the distance until a curve in the road opened into the edge of a wide ranch. Big barn on one side, bunkhouse and corrals on the other, with a ranch house tucked off to the left. I didn't stop. I kept riding. Another mile down the road, I hit a small town. I reined in outside the general store, tied the gelding, and stepped inside. Bought myself a clean shirt and a fresh pair of breeches. The ones I had on were damn near falling apart. There was a washroom in the back. I changed and tossed the old clothes in a crate marked rags. Then I crossed the street into a quiet little saloon. 6 or 7 tables, no more. A couple ranch hands stood at the bar, jawing and passing the time. I took the farthest table and ordered a drink, keeping quiet. I listened. "Well," one man said, "how are those new boys working out?" New boys? Yeah, them 2 came in last fall from up north, out of the mining fields, said their boss got gunned down by some outlaw, fella named Benjamin Burke. I froze. "I reckon they're doing all right," the other said. "Donnelly ain't bad, good worker. Fred, though, loudmouth and a bully. I don't think he'll last too long. But them 2 are like Big Harp and Little Harp. You lose one, the other's bound to follow." I eased back in my chair. Every nerve went taut. I'd let those 2 go. Figured killing McGregor was enough. They weren't the ones who pulled the trigger on Julie, but they sure as hell weren't innocent. Now they were here, within miles. My right hand trembled faintly, a spark in my trigger finger. I wanted to reach for my Colt, check the cylinder. I didn't. Just sat still. Blood started to rise, hot and hard. A man always knows when death is near, and sometimes when he's the one bringing it. One of the ranchers turned to go. I stood up and followed. "You the one got that ranch just up the road?" I asked, voice low. "That's me, Ben Thompson." "You looking for help?" "Might be. We were just talking. Alfred's on thin ice. Loudmouth. I'm thinking we'll be down a hand soon." I've wrangled, night-hawked, bossed wagons, and worked for Bill Lampley up in Montana for a couple years. "Hired on as jigger boss," I said. "I know horses and stock. Name's Killian." Thompson squinted at me. "Get your gear and ride up with me." "My bronc's tied over at the general store," I said, pointing. "I'll be waiting out front." I swung up into the saddle with a practiced ease, leather creaking under my weight. The Grulla shifted slightly beneath me, as if sensing the change in my mood. I didn't spur him. I just pointed him east and let him walk out. I kept my eyes forward, but my mind was running back to McGregor, back to Julie, back to the blood trail that should have ended in that saloon last year. I told myself it was over. Told myself I didn't need to hunt the others, that they weren't worth the bullet. But that was a lie. I just hadn't been able to find them. The trail had gone cold. Now the wind had brought their names to my ears like a ghost's whisper, and it felt like the devil himself had yanked my bridle and turned me down this road. A mile out of town, the dust thinned and gave way to open pasture. Barbed wire fence followed the road like a lazy snake. To the right, a split in the hills opened into a wide basin with green grass and scattered cattle. And straight ahead, tucked in the far corner like a secret waiting to be unearthed, was the Thompson Ranch. I saw the barns first, big, proud structures with fresh paint and tall, wide doors open to the sun. Corrals stretched out like arms, and horses moved through them like thoughts in a man's head, restless, strong, and half wild. A couple hands stood by the main gate. They looked up as I rode in, but didn't say a word. Thompson was already there, dismounted, leaning against the hitching rail like he had nowhere better to be. I stepped down, tied the Grulla, and met him with a nod. "Big place," I said. "Built it myself," Ben replied. "Ain't pretty, but she runs smooth." I didn't answer. I just looked past him at the long corral, horses milling in the heat. The Grulla tossed his head, sensing something strange. "Do you mind if I take a look around?" I asked. Thompson raised a brow but nodded. "Suit yourself. You bunk in the south loft if you stay. I'll be out directly to show you around. I moved slow, walking the fence, checking the boards, feeling the pulse of the place. It was a good ranch, well run. Horses looked like good stock, thoroughbred with a touch of Percheron, I guessed. But I wasn't here for a job. I was here to hold court, and I reckoned I'd be the judge, bailiff, and whatever else you needed. By the time I reached the barn, the sun was sliding west. Shadows stretched long and thin, and dust hung in the air like a veil. Inside, I heard footsteps. Then a voice, familiar, arrogant, and years too late. Hey, that new hand? Better not be another damn saddle polisher. I stopped cold. Alfred. I seen him out there, a voice said, casual and mean. I stayed still, shadowed by the barn's frame, watching through the narrow split between two slats. Thompson says he's a top hand, another replied. Pfft. So what? Heard he worked for Lampley up in Montana, claimed he was his jigger boss, and for the Pitchfork down in Texas. A pause. Well, Alfred muttered, he better not come in here throwing by weight around, or he'll be pushing up daisies out back. You better watch talking like that around the boss, the other man warned. Huh, what's old Ben gonna do? He ain't gonna skin his smoke wagon, and if he does, Alfred chuckled darkly, I'll put him out in that field next to the new guy. I heard the other man grunt, but the words didn't register. My focus had gone narrow, hot, and full of thunder. My right hand hovered near the butt of the peacemaker. One squeeze. That's all it would take to put this sorry excuse of a man in the ground. Just noise. And justice. I could end it. No regrets, no questions, no one would mourn him. Hell, half this outfit might thank me. I took a breath, then another. The smell of hay and sun-baked pine steadied me. Alfred's voice rang out again, ugly and sharp. I couldn't catch what he was saying. I pressed my thumb to the hammer, raised it just a hair. Then I stopped. The grulla whinnied somewhere behind me, a single sound in the still heat. And just like that, Julie's voice, the way she used to sound when she'd look at me after a long day, or when she knew something was eating at me. You still think vengeance is the same as strength? Just let it go and drop that gun belt. I closed my eyes for half a second. Long enough. I let the hammer down. Quiet. Alfred had no idea how close he'd come to being a stain in the dirt. I stepped back from the slat, straightened my vest, buttoned it again. Let the man talk. It wouldn't be long now. These two snakes had already been weighed in the balances and found wanting. But the judge just hadn't dropped his gavel yet. I'd been on the Thompson place for less than an hour, and already my gut was tight. Not from the trail. I was used to dust and aching joints. No, this was deeper, older. The kind of tension that lives in a man's bones when he's not sure whether he came to make peace or start a war. I was following Ben Thompson out toward the barns. The place sprawled across 50 sections, good timber, clean pastures, stout horses in the pens. Ben had finally come out to show me around. I couldn't concentrate, not with those two devils somewhere close. Donnelly and Alfred. The thought of Julie kept pushing into my mind, what I had told her at her grave. I should have stopped before I turned into the thing I was hunting. We rounded the barn, Ben talking easy. He pointed to the fields, the tack house, the layout. I nodded along, but barely heard him. McGregor was dead, and it hadn't made me feel any better. Why would I feel better killing Alfred and Donnelly when they were less guilty? Julie's voice again, soft as wind through cottonwood. You still think vengeance is the same as strength? Ben stopped near the gate. We're looking for a hand, he said. You want the bunkhouse, you can have the south loft. You want a trial run, you can ride out tomorrow. I shook my head. Don't think I can stay. Not with them two around. Ben's brow raised. Which two? Alfred and Donnelly. I heard 'em when I passed the barn before you come out. Oh, you got history with those? Yeah, I said, I do. Well, you're welcome at my table tonight, just the same. I gave a faint nod, mighty kind. The mess hall was low and square, boards sun-bleached and worn smooth at the latch. I stepped inside just as the lamps were being lit. Alfred and Donnelly were there, already seated at the long table. One glance was all it took. Recognition slammed through the room like a thunderclap. Alfred snarled. Well, hell. Donnelly sat straighter, hand halfway to his belt. Well, I'll be damned, Alfred muttered. Ain't this something? Fella walks in here like he owns the place and expects a place at the table. I didn't answer. I kept walking, calm, slow. But I reached up. My hand rested lightly against the butt of my Colt. Donnelly spoke next. What are you doing here, Burke? My jaw tightened. Name's Killian. Same difference, Alfred said, leaning back. Word was you shot your own wife. The room fell dead silent. I stopped. Everything in me flared white hot. My thumb found the hammer of the Colt. Just a flick. And then I did it. 4 fast clicks of the hammer cocking. Donnelly saw it, his eyes flicked wide. Even Alfred looked startled, realizing maybe he'd gone too far. Maybe I wasn't just the drifter he'd pegged me for. Maybe I was the devil they left behind and thought had burned out. You better watch that mouth, I said, voice low and coiled like a whip. Alfred stood up. I ain't afraid of you. Good, I said. Then you won't mind listening while I talk. I stepped forward, close enough that Donnelly stood up too. You ever think, I went on, what it's like to hold a dying woman in your arms? One who never wronged a soul? One who believed in you even when she shouldn't have? They didn't answer. My voice cracked. You came out there. You started that fire. McGregor lit the match, but you stacked the wood. You put me at 3-to-1 odds and forced my hand, and you think you don't have blood on your hands? If I were you, I'd start talking to the Almighty, because you'll be meeting him soon. Ben Thompson's voice cut through the doorway. Everything all right in here? I didn't look at him, just stared at Alfred, one last second. Then I dropped my hand from the Colt and breathed. Did I really want to kill another man right now? Even though revenge was screaming to do it. I turned slowly. Yeah, I said, just settling an old itch. Ben looked between us all, then gave a slow nod. Supper's on, let's keep it peaceful. Alfred sat down hard. Donnelly didn't move. I walked to the far end of the table, sat and ate. Nobody said a word to me the rest of the night, but they didn't stop watching either. Later, after the dishes were scraped and the men turned in, I stepped outside. The air had gone cool. The stars were high. My boots thudded softly on the packed earth as I walked toward the corral. The grulla nickered and stepped close. I reached out, resting a hand on his neck. My palm was trembling again. I closed my eyes. An image of Julie, laying in the dust, me staring at her blood running from her mouth, flashed through my brain. I opened my eyes, rubbing my forehead with my left hand. I could have done it. I could have killed them both right there, and the world would have slept better for it. But I didn't, because vengeance was easy. Living with it, that was the hard part. Ben joined me sometime later, stood beside me at the fence, quiet for a long while. You sure you're riding out? He asked. I took a moment, then nodded my head. I figured, was all Ben said. I spent the night in the south loft of the bunkhouse. It wasn't much, just a mattress stuffed with horsehair, a tin basin on a crate, and a cracked window that let the prairie wind sneak in, but it was clean, and it was quiet, mostly. Donnelly showed up after supper. I caught his boots on the steps and knew who it was before the door even opened. The man froze in the frame for a long second when he saw me. I didn't move, didn't blink. He muttered something low, maybe a curse or a grunt, then shut the door behind him and sat on the edge of the far bunk, stiff as fence wire. We didn't speak. We didn't have to. By now, both of us knew exactly who the other was. I saw Alfred walk in too, but he stayed on the far end of the room. I watched them both like wolves on a ridge, waiting to see if one would try to circle behind me. That night, I didn't sleep much. I laid there, one hand resting near the grip of my pistol, listening to the wind push dust around the eaves. And sometime just before dawn, I got up. Didn't pack much. I hadn't unpacked in the first place. I stepped out into the cold, gray hush of morning, the sky still half asleep. The bunkhouse creaked behind me. No one stirred. No goodbye. I saddled the grulla gelding without a sound, swung up and rode west out of the Thompson place. Pulled my hat down over my eyes, finger-tapped the butt of my Colt just to feel it, and rode on. Some men were better left breathing. Not because they deserved it, but because I'd already buried enough of them. I'd been thinking, and I had strong feelings about leaving this part of my life behind. And adding those 2 skunks to my list of bodies buried in Boot Hill wouldn't help my cause.